We're going to now go through something called reciprocal ratios, which, as my opening sign indicates, is probably something upside downy. Let's just quickly, before we go too far, let's do a quick SOHCAHTOA review. So as you may or may not recall, we have ratios in a triangle, and what we say is that the sine ratio is the opposite over the hypotenuse, and the cosine is the adjacent over the hypotenuse, and the tangent is the opposite over the adjacent. And so, and also another quick reminder, if we have a triangle, a right angle triangle in particular, and we said this is the angle that we're interested in, then the side across from the 90-degree angle, that's our hypotenuse. The side across from the angle that we care about is the opposite, and the one left over is the adjacent. So, what that means if I have this triangle over here, and let's say I have, this is A and this is B, and if I say the sine of A, the cos of A, and the tan of A, well, the sine of A is, so if this is A, then that's going to be, that's the opposite, that's the hypotenuse, that's the adjacent. So sine of A is going to be 12 over 13, cos of A is going to be 5 over 13, and tangent of A is going to be opposite over adjacent, which is 12 over 5. If I switch things up and said, what is the cosine of B, for example? Well, then this is our angle, so then that becomes opposite, and this becomes adjacent, and cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, which would be 12 out of 13. So, what are reciprocal ratios? So let's actually go talk about the reciprocal ratios now. Well, it's just 3 more ratios that we are going to define. And we're going to say it's going to be the secant ratio, the cosecant ratio, and the cotangent ratio. And the secant ratio is defined as 1 over cosine. And the cosecant, it sounds like it would be 1 over cosine, but it's really 1 over sine. And the cotangent is 1 over, well, at least that one makes sense, tangent. And much like sine, cosine, and tangent, we want to have nifty 3-letter abbreviations. And so the abbreviation for secant is sec. The abbreviation for cosecant, well, we can't just use the first 3 letters this time because then that would look like cosine. So the abbreviation for cosecant is CSC. In some books I've seen it like this, but we're not going to do that. And the abbreviation for cotangent is cot. And those are the abbreviations. So, we know that we have SOHCAHTOA. So what does this tell us about the reciprocal ratios? Well, the cosecant, which is 1 over the sine, so sine is normally opposite over hypotenuse, so cosecant is going to be hypotenuse over opposite. Secant is the reciprocal of cosine, so that's going to be a hypotenuse. Oops, that should be over opposite. That's a big mistake. This one is hypotenuse over adjacent because secant is the reciprocal of cosine. And then cotangent is going to be adjacent over opposite. So let's say, for example, we have a triangle here. And it's going to say A and B. And if you worked it out, 6 squared, 8 squared, this is going to be 10. So let's say the question was, what is the cosecant of B in this triangle? So cosecant of B, well, one way of looking at it is you could just say cosecant is hypotenuse over opposite. So it's going to be hypotenuse. So with B, this is our angle. So hypotenuse over opposite is going to be 10 over 6. Another way of doing cosecant of B would be like saying, okay, that's 1 over the sine of B. And the sine of B is going to be 6 over 10. So it's 1 over 6 over 10, which is 1 divided by 6 over 10, which is 1 times 10 over 6, which is 10 divided by 6. And both of these ways work in terms of figuring out the ratios.